There is a strange and unsettling truth about human nature. Some of the most corrupt, ruthless, and manipulative leaders in history have not only ruled over people, they have been adored by them, worshipped, defended, even loved. Think about it. Men and women who lied, exploited, and destroyed often rise to positions of power with the cheering of the very people whose lives they will go on to harm. The paradox is chilling. Why would someone willingly submit to, even glorify, a leader who clearly serves themselves before the people? This is not just a question about politics, it's about psychology. It's about the parts of human nature we rarely want to admit, the ancient instincts still whispering in our minds, guiding our loyalties and our fears. Because the truth is, corrupt leaders do not only take power, they are given it, handed it, offered it like a crown. And the ones who give it are us. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this darkness. While many philosophers built their work on ideals of reason, morality, and virtue, Nietzsche dared to look at the forces beneath, the ones we try to keep hidden, our hunger for strength, our admiration for dominance, our secret longing to belong to something greater, even if it devours us. To Nietzsche, the adoration of corrupt leaders wasn't an accident of history, it was a recurring pattern, a symptom of the human will, especially in times of chaos and fear. In this journey, we'll step into uncomfortable territory. We will examine the shadowed corners of our psychology, where morality blurs and survival takes the throne. We'll see how Nietzsche's insights can explain why corrupt leaders rise, not despite their corruption, but often because of it. Over the course of this exploration, we will uncover six powerful truths, each one a lens into why humanity, again and again, finds itself kneeling before those who would exploit it. By the end, you will see this pattern not just in history books or news headlines, but in everyday life, in workplaces, relationships, in communities. And the question you'll leave with is not just why do they lead, but why do we follow? It often begins in moments of crisis, a nation facing economic collapse, a community reeling from violence, a family caught in turmoil. In these moments, there is a collective sense of fragility, a gnawing fear that the ground beneath us is no longer stable. And when the air smells of uncertainty, we instinctively scan the horizon for someone who seems immune to it, someone unshakable, someone who looks like they cannot be broken. Imagine a ship caught in a storm. The waves are towering, the sky is black, and the passengers are panicking. Suddenly, a man appears on deck, standing tall, face set in determination, voice steady and commanding. He shouts orders with the tone of someone who knows exactly what to do. Do you question his motives? Do you stop to examine his character? No. In that moment, you don't care if he's honest, kind, or even competent in the long run. You care that he looks like he can keep the ship from sinking. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this pattern woven into the fabric of human nature. At the heart of his philosophy is the concept of the will to power, the deep, often unconscious drive to seek strength, influence, and the ability to shape one's world. We are not merely creatures who want to survive, we want to thrive, to rise, to dominate our environment, rather than be crushed by it. But here is where the paradox emerges. When we ourselves feel powerless, we often seek that power in others. We look for a figure who radiates confidence, decisiveness, and control, someone whose will seems larger than our own. It is as if we hope to borrow their strength by giving them our trust. History is full of these moments. When Rome teetered on the edge of collapse, Julius Caesar's unwavering ambition was not seen only as dangerous, it was intoxicating. When Germany faced humiliation and economic ruin after World War I, many saw in Adolf Hitler not just a politician, but a figure who embodied a fierce will to restore greatness, no matter the moral cost. It's easy to look back and say they should have known better. But Nietzsche would ask us to go deeper. He would remind us that in times of weakness, our moral compass does not always point to what is right, it points to what feels strong. This is not just true in politics. Think of the workplace. The manager who cuts corners, bullies staff, but gets results will often gain admiration, even from those who suffer under them. Think of personal relationships. The friend or partner whose decisiveness borders on dominance can feel strangely reassuring when life feels chaotic. Why? Because strength, or even the appearance of it, calms the primal fear that no one is in control. Nietzsche believed this was part of the herd instinct. When danger looms, the herd looks for the strongest among them, not the kindest, to lead. And if the strongest is also ruthless, the herd may forgive that ruthlessness as a necessary weapon for survival. Of course, the tragedy is that this perceived strength can be a mirage. The ship's captain, who commands with authority, may in fact be steering into the rocks. The leader who promises salvation may be tightening the chains. But in the moment, when fear is loud and clarity is faint, we often choose the figure who feels like safety, even if history will later reveal they were the storm itself. So the first truth we must face is this: we do not always follow because a leader is good. We follow because they are strong when we feel weak. And until we understand that impulse in ourselves, we will be forever vulnerable to those who know how to perform strength, even if all they offer is the illusion of it. There's a quiet truth about morality that few want to admit. It is easiest to be virtuous when our survival is not at stake. It's simple enough to speak of justice, compassion, and integrity when the cupboards are full, the streets are safe, and the future looks stable. But strip away that comfort, and you begin to see another layer of human nature, one that does not bow to ideals, but to necessity. Imagine a village in the midst of famine. At first, the rules still hold. Food is shared. Neighbors look after one another. But as the hunger deepens, something shifts. The moral lines blur. Theft, once unthinkable, becomes tolerable, even justifiable, if it means feeding one's children. People who once judged dishonesty now admire cunning. The definition of good bends toward whatever keeps the group alive. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this. In On the Genealogy of Morality, he challenged the notion that morality is fixed or universal. For him, much of what we call morality is a product of the herd instinct, the collective agreement on rules that protect the group. But when the group feels threatened, those rules can change overnight. We see this in politics throughout history. When Athens was under siege, democratic ideals gave way to more authoritarian measures, justified as necessary for survival. When the Weimar Republic collapsed under economic strain, the people's appetite for liberal values weakened, and the allure of a leader who promised security, even through cruelty, grew irresistible. Nietzsche would call this a form of moral recalibration. The herd no longer rewards those who are virtuous in the abstract. It rewards those who protect the group, no matter the methods. In this climate, the corrupt leader gains legitimacy because their ruthlessness is reframed as strength. Their cruelty becomes a kind of twisted virtue, and it is debt just nations. Think of a corporation on the verge of bankruptcy. The CEO who slashes jobs and bends ethical rules may be condemned by outsiders, but inside the company, they may be praised as the one willing to do what it takes. Or in a friend group under pressure, the person who manipulates and excludes others might be defended as looking out for us. Modern psychology echoes this through situational ethics, the idea that people often make moral decisions not by fixed principles, but by weighing them against the urgency of the situation. In other words, survival instincts override moral consistency. This is why corrupt leaders often rise in times of crisis. They understand that the people's hunger for security will eclipse their hunger for justice, and they frame every moral compromise as a shield against an even greater threat. It's here that Nietzsche's critique becomes uncomfortably personal. It's tempting to think, I would never compromise my values for survival. But the truth is, most of us would if the stakes felt high enough, and that is precisely what makes us vulnerable. Because the corrupt leader's greatest weapon is not simply force, it is the ability to convince us that without them, we will not survive. Once we believe that, we begin to rewrite our moral code in their favor, and every compromise we make in their name binds us to them more tightly. So the second truth is this: morality is not as unshakable as we imagine. Under the weight of survival, it bends, and when it bends, the corrupt can slip through. The question we must carry forward is, if survival demands a price, how much of our integrity are we willing to spend before we no longer recognize ourselves? History remembers corrupt leaders for their cruelty, their greed, their crimes, but it often forgets the first thing that drew people to them: charm. We imagine tyranny entering with a clenched fist, but more often it arrives with a smile. Think of the first time you meet someone magnetic, someone who makes you feel seen, valued, understood. Their words flow effortlessly. Their confidence feels contagious. You walk away with a sense that they get you, and you get them. You trust them, not because you have studied their character, but because you feel good in their presence. This is the dangerous magic of charisma. It bypasses reason and speaks directly to emotion. And while charisma can be genuine, in the hands of a corrupt leader, it becomes a mask, a carefully crafted performance designed to hide the rot underneath. Nietzsche, while not using the modern term charisma, understood this interplay between appearance and reality. He saw how leaders cultivate an image of greatness that appeals to our instincts, often distracting us from their moral bankruptcy. They offer the herd what it longs to see, a figure who embodies confidence, certainty, and vision. Modern psychology has given us language for this manipulation through the concept of the dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Leaders high in these traits often possess a keen understanding of human emotions, not to nurture them, but to exploit them. They know how to mirror our values, echo our fears, and make us feel uniquely chosen. Consider historical examples. Benito Mussolini's fiery oratory, blending nationalism with theatrical bravado. Joseph Stalin's calculated warmth in private meetings, which stood in stark contrast to the terror of his policies. Even in the corporate world, charismatic CEOs have rallied companies around visions they never intended to fulfill, pocketing the gains while the organization crumbled. The reason charisma works so well is that it triggers trust before scrutiny. We are wired to respond to warmth and confidence as signals of safety. Our evolutionary past has taught us that those who can inspire others are often worth following. But in the modern age, this instinct can be hacked. Nietzsche would likely warn us that the danger lies in confusing the aesthetic of greatness with the reality of it. A leader's ability to inspire is not proof of their integrity, only proof of their skill in playing the role we want to see. This is why the most dangerous corrupt leaders do not present themselves as villains. They present themselves as saviors. They cloak themselves in shared language, shared identity, and shared struggle. And because their charisma makes us feel good, we often ignore or even rationalize the cracks in their story. Think of a beautifully painted mask. It draws the eye, it holds your attention, but its purpose is to hide what lies beneath. The more dazzling the mask, the less likely you are to look behind it. This is the third truth we must confront. Charisma is not proof of virtue. It is often the camouflage that allows corruption to flourish. And this brings us to a sobering realization. If we want to resist the pull of corrupt leadership, we must train ourselves to separate how a leader makes us feel from who they truly are. The performance may be flawless, but the script may be rotten. The question becomes, will we be satisfied with the mask, or will we demand to see the face beneath it? There's a moment, subtle but powerful, when fear changes its disguise. At first, fear is clear. We feel it in the presence of a predator, a threat, an enemy. But with time, that fear can transform into something we mistake for respect. We tell ourselves we are not afraid. We are simply acknowledging someone else's strength or authority. Nietzsche warned of this illusion. In societies searching for order, there is a tendency to equate the capacity to instill fear with genuine greatness. A leader who dominates others, silences dissent, and commands obedience may be admired, not for their moral worth, but for their sheer ability to impose their will. Consider ancient Sparta. Strength and discipline were virtues, but they were also weapons of control. The system kept the population obedient, partly through admiration of military prowess, but also through a constant undercurrent of fear. The line between respect and intimidation blurred until they were almost indistinguishable. In more recent times, think of certain corporate environments where the CEO rules through constant pressure and implied threats. Employees might call them a visionary or a strong leader, but beneath those words lies the unspoken truth. Their respect is laced with fear of crossing them. Psychology calls this phenomenon coercive respect. When people feel powerless, they may convince themselves that their submission is a form of admiration. It's a defense mechanism, a way of reframing vulnerability so it feels less humiliating. I am not afraid of this person, we tell ourselves. I just respect their power. Nietzsche understood that this is not true respect. True respect is freely given. It arises from recognizing virtue, wisdom, and integrity. Fear based respect is an emotional hostage situation. It is the mind trying to find dignity in submission. The danger is that once fear is reframed as respect, it becomes self reinforcing. People begin to publicly praise the very qualities that oppress them, and the leader, hearing this praise, takes it as confirmation of their legitimacy. A cycle is born. Fear feeds obedience. Obedience feeds perceived respect, and perceived respect feeds greater power. We see this in authoritarian regimes, where leaders are glorified in public ceremonies, even as dissenters are silenced. The applause is not always born from love. Often, it is born from the survival instinct, dressed up as reverence. Nietzsche would ask us, why do we let this happen? And part of the answer lies in our discomfort with admitting fear. To confess fear is to confess weakness, so we rename it. We call it respect, admiration, or loyalty, and in doing so, we make it easier to live with, but harder to challenge. The fourth truth, then, is this: fear can wear the mask of respect, and when it does, it makes tyranny feel like leadership. If we wish to see clearly, we must be brutally honest with ourselves about the nature of our feelings toward those in power. Are we truly respecting them for their wisdom and integrity, or are we avoiding the consequences of defiance? This distinction matters because the moment we confuse fear with respect, we hand corrupt leaders the very legitimacy they crave, and they will use it to tighten their grip. One of the most intoxicating feelings a human being can experience is the certainty that they belong. Not just belonging in the vague sense of being part of humanity, but belonging to something special, something exclusive, something chosen. Corrupt leaders understand this better than most. They know that people will forgive almost anything if it means keeping their place in a group that makes them feel significant. And so they create an us and a them. Nietzsche, while deeply critical of herd mentality, understood the psychological safety people find in groups. In times of instability, belonging can feel like survival itself. To be cast out of the herd is to be left exposed to danger, and so the herd will cling to anyone who promises protection from the outsiders. History is filled with examples. Leaders who have rallied nations around the idea of being a chosen people, destined for greatness. Leaders who have drawn sharp lines between real citizens and others. Leaders who have promised their followers that they alone are the guardians of the true culture, the true faith, the true destiny. It is not only nations that fall under this spell. In corporations, a CEO might convince employees that they are part of an elite, innovative family, unlike any other company. In social circles, a dominating personality might make the group feel like a rare, enlightened collective, unlike the ordinary people outside. Psychology explains this through social identity theory. Our self esteem is closely tied to the groups we identify with. When our group is praised, we feel proud. When it is attacked, we feel personally wounded. A corrupt leader exploits this by making loyalty to them synonymous with loyalty to the group itself. Here pits how the trap works. First, they elevate the group. We are the special ones. Then, they introduce a threat. They are out to get us. Finally, they position themselves as the indispensable protector. Without me, you lose everything that makes you special. Once this bond is forged, dissent becomes almost unthinkable. Criticizing the leader feels like betraying the group, and betraying the group feels like betraying yourself. Nietzsche would likely see this as the herd instinct intensified to its most dangerous form. A collective identity so tightly woven around a leader that individuality dissolves. People no longer evaluate the leader's actions on moral grounds. They defend them automatically because to question them is to risk exile. And exile, in the psychological sense, is terrifying. Studies show that social rejection activates the same areas of the brain as physical pain. To be cast out of the chosen group doesn't just feel sad, it feels like a kind of death. This is why even intelligent, moral people can find themselves defending the indefensible. Their loyalty is not to the truth, it is to the bond that makes them feel alive, safe, and significant. The fifth truth, then, is this: the promise of belonging can be more powerful than the call of conscience. To resist the seduction of the chosen group, we must be willing to risk standing alone, and that is perhaps the most difficult form of courage, because it demands that we trade the warmth of belonging for the cold clarity of independence. Nietzsche might say that true strength is not found in being part of the favored herd, but in walking away from it when its path leads into darkness. There is a strange and unsettling truth about the human mind. Sometimes the things we admire most in others are the very things we cannot accept in ourselves. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the hidden part of our psyche where we store traits, desires, and impulses that we reject or deny. It contains what we fear to admit we want, as well as the parts of ourselves we've been taught to suppress. Nietzsche didn't use Jung's terminology, but he understood the principle. He knew that people often seek in leaders the qualities they lack or believe they must not display in their own lives. The leader becomes a vessel for our unspoken desires and forbidden impulses. Their Hespit's how it works. Imagine someone raised to always be polite, deferential, and restrained. They have learned to keep their ambition quiet, their anger bottled up, their self interest hidden. When they encounter a leader who is unapologetically ambitious, boldly confrontational, and shamelessly self promoting, something stirs within them. On the surface, they may criticize that leader's arrogance, but secretly, they feel a thrill. This person dares to do what they themselves cannot. This is projection. We place our hidden qualities onto another person, and in doing so, we either love them or hate them for carrying what we have disowned in ourselves. In politics, this can be devastating. A corrupt leader may embody aggression, dominance, or cunning, qualities many of their followers secretly wish they could wield in their own struggles. By supporting the leader, they feel a vicarious sense of power, as if their own shadow has been unleashed through another. Jung warned that when we do not confront our own shadow, it controls us from the dark, and Nietzsche would add that when entire societies repress certain drives, the hunger for power, the will to break rules, the desire to dominate, those drives will find expression in the leaders they elevate. That's not just politics. In corporate life, employees may admire the executive who breaks all the rules to get results because they themselves long to break free from the constraints of bureaucracy. In personal relationships, a group might idolize the friend who is brutally honest, not because they like cruelty, but because they envy the freedom to speak without fear of rejection. The danger is that when we project our shadow onto a leader, we stop seeing them for who they truly are. They become an archetype, a symbol of something deep within us, rather than a flawed human being with moral responsibilities. We excuse their corruption because we are, in a sense, defending a part of ourselves. This is the sixth truth. When we project our shadow onto a leader, our loyalty is not to them, but to the part of ourselves we have hidden away. And here lies the key to breaking the spell. If we can integrate our shadow, if we can own our ambition, our assertiveness, our will to influence, we no longer need a leader to carry those traits for us. We can admire strength without surrendering our judgment. Nietzsche might say that the true Übermensch is the one who no longer needs to live through another's power because they have learned to cultivate their own. In the end, the projection of the shadow explains why some people will follow a corrupt leader even when the evidence of wrongdoing is undeniable. They are not defending the corruption, they are defending a part of themselves they cannot yet face. Until we turn inward and confront that hidden part, we remain susceptible to the leader who promises to be our shadow in the light. We began with a paradox. Why do people, intelligent, moral, capable people, so often worship leaders who are corrupt, self serving, and ruthless? Nietzsche offered us one answer. It is not simply that such leaders seize power, more often, we give it to them. We place the crown on their head. We invite them to rule. Over the course of this journey, we have uncovered 6 truths that explain why this happens. We crave strength when we feel weak. In times of fear and uncertainty, the appearance of unshakable power feels like safety, even when it is a mirage. Morality bends under the weight of survival. When survival feels at stake, we may abandon our highest ideals in favor of whoever can protect the group. Charisma is a mask that hides the rot. Charm disarms our reason, creating trust before we have a chance to scrutinize character. We confuse fear with respect. Intimidation can masquerade as authority, making tyranny feel like legitimate leadership. The seduction of belonging to a seed chosen sept group. The promise of being one of the special ones can outweigh the call of conscience. We project our own shadow onto the leader. We may admire in them the traits we have repressed in ourselves, defending them as if defending part of our own identity. Seen together, these truths are not just a study of history, they are a mirror. They force us to confront our own role and the rise of those who would exploit us. Because the hard truth is this: corrupt leaders survive not only because of their cunning, but because of our complicity, our fears, our longing for safety, our need for belonging, our unexamined shadows. These are the soil in which their power grows. But this is not a call to despair. Nietzsche's philosophy was not meant to paralyze us with cynicism, but to awaken us. When we see the mechanisms clearly, we are no longer helpless before them. So the challenge is personal. The next time you find yourself admiring a leader, ask, am I drawn to their virtue or to the illusion of strength they project? Am I compromising my values for survival? Do I truly respect them, or do I simply fear them? Is my loyalty to truth or to the comfort of belonging? Am I seeing them clearly, or am I projecting my shadow onto them? If we can answer these questions with honesty, we strip away the illusions that corrupt power depends on. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." The same is true of freedom. If we have a clear why, a deep personal commitment to truth, integrity, and courage, we can bear the discomfort of resisting leaders who promise comfort at the cost of our soul. And perhaps that is the truest act of leadership, not to follow the strongest voice in the room, but to lead ourselves in the quiet, difficult moments when fear would have us kneel. If you've stayed with me through this exploration, I thank you. We dive into questions like this every week, peeling back the layers of philosophy, psychology, and history to see the human condition more clearly. So if this resonated with you, subscribe, share your reflections in the comments, and join this journey, because the world does not just need stronger leaders, it needs stronger followers willing to see clearly, stand firmly, and refuse to worship the corrupt.